I don't know, Mrs. Ackerman. It seems to me that you know more about all this than you're letting on.
The truth is, my husband knew, and he told me. That's why I thought I should deliver these papers to you in person. It seemed very impersonal to simply mail them to you or tell you the contents over the telephone.
Mrs. Ackerman, what is this all about?
Perhaps you should look at this.
Owen, what does it say?
To my son, Brian.
Yes, Mr. Madison. Brian Madison is the beneficiary of Eddie's will.
Well, then he did mean it figuratively. I mean, he always considered Brian like a son. Well, that is what he meant, you realize. It has to be.
Well, maybe this letter will tell us.
Oh, wait. The letter's for Brian, isn't it?
Yes. I think that is what he intended.
I think under the circumstances, Brian won't mind.
Oh, don't. It's wrong. Mrs. Ackerman, you know this is wrong.
Well, I do know that Eddie considered Mr. Madison his closest friend. At any rate, I think I better leave now. I'll be at the Monticello Arms if you need me. You can reach me there until tomorrow afternoon. I'll show myself out. Good night.
Mrs. Ackerman. Well, I guess all I have to do is figure out Eddie's little chicken marks. My God.
What is it?
Nola, Eddie claims that Brian is his son, not mine.
Let me see that, Owen.
Somehow I don't think there's anything in this, Nola, that you don't already know. Dear Brian, here it is, Eddie Vaughn's last press release. I remember when you were a kid, when I read you stories, you always liked surprise endings. I suppose what I'm about to tell you now is the topper of them all.
I don't know how else to say it, Brian, except straight and simple. I'm your father.
Your real father.
It's not that I wanted to keep it a secret this long. 25 years ago, when I found out that Nola was expecting my child, I wanted to shout the news from the rooftops. But I had a couple of very good reasons for keeping quiet, and you have every right to know what they were. First of all, kid, I always loved your mom. That was never any secret. But I knew Nola never loved me enough to make it work between us. You see, I cared too much about her happiness to try and make her stay with someone she really didn't want to be tied down to. Besides, you know what a mess I made of my marriages. And I also wasn't too sure if I was cut out to be the kind of dad that you deserved. But I knew that Owen was, and I was right. I can't think of anyone I've ever respected or admired more.
And Nola loved him, so I figured that was the best arrangement. When I see the fine man you've grown to be, I know I made the right decision. By the time you read this, I won't be around. But I want to be a fond memory for you, Brian, and for Owen, too. So please, kid, don't hate me for what I did or for my wanting the truth to come out now. I just want you to remember me as family. Goodbye, son. Your loving father, Eddie.
How touching.
Is that all you can say?
I never knew Eddie could be this creative.
Are you saying this isn't true?
Well, it's a lie, Owen. It's all a lie.
Nola, the only time Eddie ever even stretched the truth was to hype some project that he was promoting. On a man-to-man basis, he was the most honest man I ever met.
How can you possibly believe that he was Brian's father?
Why would he invent all this? Why would he seal it up until his death?
Well, he said it himself in that letter. He loved me. He was jealous of you. And I suppose this is his way of getting back at you for his unrequited love.
Come on. No, I don't believe that for a minute.
Well, then, you know how much he cared for Brian. Perhaps it was the act of a man who realized he wasn't getting any younger and had very little to show for his life. By declaring himself to be Brian's father, he was buying himself a bit of immortality.
Immortality? Are you kidding me?
He is not Brian's father. You are.
Nola, the more I think about this letter, the more sense it makes. It fits the pattern of Eddie's life exactly.
How?
Eddie was always willing to do whatever you want him to do, as long as he thought that it was going to make you happy.
We were nothing more than good friends.
In fact, he cared so much about your happiness, it probably cost him his life, didn't it?
How can you say that?
Nola, it was Eddie who concocted all those strange goings-on at the soundstage, wasn't it? Recreating the curses of Mansion of the Damned.
To promote the picture,
To promote you, Nola, to promote you. He tried to burn down that soundstage as the ultimate publicity stunt. Only he wasn't very proficient at arson, was he? Oh, my God. Of course. That's what Eddie was trying to tell Brian the night that he died, wasn't it? He was trying to tell him the truth. Isn't that right, Nola? He was trying to tell him that he was his father. Oh, God, Nola. How could you have gone such lengths? Was I such a catch that you had to do that?
I loved you, Owen. You can't imagine how much I had to do it.
And you always knew what you had to do, didn't you, Nola, ever since I met you?
I didn't love Eddie. I didn't want him to be the father of my child. I hated the idea. I wanted you.
And you got me, didn't you, with a very convenient lie. Well, you have something to thank Eddie for, don't you?
Look, you didn't marry me just because of Brian. I know you didn't. You loved me.
Yes, I did. I did love you.
Don't use the past tense, Owen, please. Look, what I did was terribly wrong. I know that, but I was so desperate. Owen, you loved Brian as your own son. I know you did.
Yes, I did, and I still do, Nola. That's why it hurt me so much to see him suffer. Oh, my God, Nola, we made them both suffer. Paige and Brian. Because I thought they were brother and sister. But you knew the truth all along, didn't you?
Well, I was so sure that in time they would meet others and forget about this crush they had on each other.
Unfortunately, that didn't work out, did it? So what happened? Brian went off and joined the Navy. And Paige, what did she do when she found out that Brian was her brother? She started hanging around with some thug, which almost got her killed.
But it wasn't easy for me, Owen. You know how heartsick I was when Brian left.
Oh, look, that was the worst thing that anyone could have done. You were willing to ruin those two kids' lives just to promote your little lie.
Look, the only reason I did those things was because I loved you. I was so afraid of losing you.
I'm sorry, Nola. I'm sorry. I just can't forgive you for that. That's the worst thing that anyone could have done.
God, you've got to forgive me, Owen. Please, I'm begging
No.
you.
Too much has happened, Nola. Too many people have been hurt. Oh, God.
Nancy, thank you for a wonderful dinner.
You're welcome, Draper. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Where you ate, dear, I think you never ate at home.
Well, it's just that tonight's dinner was a nice change of pace from the recent bill of fare at the Scott House.
Let me guess. I'll bet you've been dining on the infamous Thanksgiving dinner leftovers.
Oh, yes, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
All right, that's enough. Miles and Nicole and little Adam came over for dinner on Thanksgiving, and, well, I'm not used to cooking for all those people, and I thought there wouldn't be enough food, so I bought a large turkey.
Isn't that always the case? We just finished our turkey last night.
Thank goodness.
Well, I'm glad you two accepted our invitation for tonight. It's been quite a while since the four of us have gotten together socially.
Well, I think you can blame that on your partner here, Mike, who's been burning the midnight oil.
No, wait a minute. Not so much recently.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, Draper, because I know how hard you've been working. And I was afraid it was going to affect your health.
Well, I have been working to pay off that debt to Margot. But ever since I read the last law journal, There's no great urgency to put a ribbon around my caseload. I'm going to be in Monticello for quite a while.
Yeah. It's very disappointing to read that Stuart Paxton had filled the job. But Draper, it won't help to brood over it, so...
Well, I'm trying to be as philosophical as I can.
Good.
Yeah, I just believe that the job was never meant to be.
Yeah. Well, I am glad they filled that position. Saves a lot of wear and tear on my nerves.
That's true. It would have been at least 6 weeks before Henson got back from Europe, and heaven knows how long before he even set up an interview.
And I would have been building my hopes higher and higher for no real purpose at all.
It does appear as if Mr. Henson had his mind made up a long time ago.
Honey, I am more and more convinced that he just said that he would give Draper a second chance at that job simply to placate you.
Yeah. And Mike, I really appreciate your talking to Henson for me. But I have a feeling that even if I'd come across as another Clarence Darrow, he wouldn't have changed his mind.
You may be right, Draper. At least I'm glad you're making a realistic appraisal of the situation.
Oh, no, Mike. He talks a good game, but in actuality, he has not truly accepted the fact that he will not be working with that firm.
Why do you say that?
Well, normally, Draper is a very sound sleeper. Past couple of nights, he's been tossing and turning and muttering some not so very nice things about Mr. Henson.
Oh, I don't do that. Do I?
Well, I just keep telling Draper to consider it their loss.
I couldn't agree with you more, April.
Yes, and considering how things are right now, maybe it's all for the better. Because when you relocate, well, it's such an adjustment. Much more so for a couple who's going to have a baby.
Well, I admit that I'm rather happy that we're staying in Monticello and that our baby will be born among our friends and our family.
I know what you mean. Okay, excuse me, I'm going to get the coffee.
Oh, let me help.
No, that's all right.
Oh, no,
April.
I
Just
want
take it.
to. Excuse me.
Oh, Mike. Let me be honest with you. I'm just as glad that that New York business is all taken care of and out of my hands now.
Draper, there's one thing you shouldn't forget. There was only one partner who didn't feel that you were well qualified for that job.
Yeah. And I'm beginning to think that having Henson as an associate wasn't such a terrific thing after all.
Well, his conduct in this case was rather unethical. Certainly doesn't speak well for the man.
Well, maybe he got his business ethics from a former client of his.
Oh?
Margot. Small world, isn't it? Margot was a client of Henson's about 10 years ago.
I see.
Believe I didn't plug in the coffee.
Well, things like that happen. Nancy, you know, helping you wasn't the only reason I came in here. I have to ask you something.
Go ahead.
When Mike was in New York, did Henson tell him why he refused to hire Draper?
Now, why do you ask that?
It's just that when the four of us were discussing Draper's problem, I got a kind of funny feeling.
About what?
Well, you and Mike were discussing the situation rather knowledgeably.
Well, we've tried to keep up with the situation.
Almost as if there's something you know that you don't want to tell.
April, believe me, if we had any information that would be helpful to Draper, we would certainly tell him.
Does that mean you know something that you think it would be in Draper's best interest not to know?
It's interesting.
What is it?
I had the same feeling about you inside that you had of us. April, how much do you know?
I know that it was Margot. And you know that too, don't you, Nancy? Margot was only trying to help me, Nancy. She was not trying to hurt Draper.
Granted, but she did not help him.
No, she didn't. Ever since Draper was approached about this job in New York, Margot was aware of the fact that I was not keen on relocating, and she saw no reason for Draper to leave Monticello when he and Mike had a very good practice right here.
And she didn't want to see you move so far away.
No, I'm sure that was the major reason. Anyway, she's known Henson for years, so she called him and informed him of the situation.
She told Mr. Henson that Draper was wrong for the job. That's what she did. Now, should she be the one to judge his competence as a lawyer?
Obviously, for some reason, Henson thought so.
Well, because Draper never got a reasonable explanation for that decision, it's been a very sore point with him.
Nancy, I hate to think what Draper would do if he ever found out.
April, how long have you known what Margot did?
About 2 weeks. Nancy, I was not party to the deception. No matter how much I did not want to move out of Monticello, I knew how much Draper wanted that job and how much he deserved it.
Mm-hmm. So, Margot told you?
Slip of the tongue. She couldn't understand why Henson had changed his mind about seeing Draper.
I see.
Nancy, when I found out, I was absolutely livid.
Well, I don't doubt it.
And I told Margot exactly how I felt. And she tried to make amends.
She did? In what way?
She agreed to call Henson and to tell him that everything she had told him previously about Draper was false. And Nancy, I was standing right there when she made that call. Not only did Henson agree to see Draper, he agreed to keep an open mind.
Well,
Nancy, there's very little of what I've told you right now that you didn't already know. How and when did you find out?
Look, because of the effect that this was having on Draper's work, Mike and I did a little questioning ourselves.
I see. Look, I know Margot handled this whole entire thing wrong. But she meant well, Nancy. I believe that. I have to believe it. And if Draper finds out, he will never speak to her again, and I can't let that happen.
Oh, I know this is rough for you because you love them both.
They were just getting to a point where they could be civil with one another.
Well, don't worry about Mike or me saying anything, okay? Because, well, now that the job is filled, well, the matter's closed as far as we're concerned.
Thank you. As much as I hate to keep the truth from Draper, under the circumstances, I don't see what else I can do.
So what do you say, nice long ski weekend? Sometime next month? Mrs. Goodman would be happy to stay with Adam.
I'm sorry, what did you say? Oh, my mind was wandering.
I know, it's been that way all night. What's the matter with you?
Well, nothing. Maybe a little tired.
Oh, you're concerned about something.
No, I'm not. Really. Fine.
Can I try my hand at mind reading?
Be my guest.
You're still troubled about that interview you did as part of the newscast tonight.
You mean my discussion with Dr. Lennox?
Yes. By the way, I thought you tried to avoid having authors on to talk about their own books.
Usually I do.
I know you get dozens of review copies every week with offers of writers coming on to talk. Why'd you pick this one?
Well, it just seemed to me that The Madness Among Us has something very important to offer.
That may be, but you got a particular interest in the topic, don't you?
Why do you say that?
I will just bet that you have that doctor on so you can get some expert information about whether or not you might have to deal with the problem yourself.
Miles!
I'm sorry, but ever since you found out that my mother suffered from schizophrenia, you've been scared to death that I might follow in her footsteps.
Oh, honey, don't be silly. You are the sanest person that I know.
If I were to inherit the problem, the chances are it would have shown up many years ago.
I know. Now, honey, can we talk about this another time?
All right, but I'm not just making these assurances for you, you know.
Sweetie, I know that.
It's a scary thing to realize you might be susceptible to inheriting mental illness. I mean, when I found out my mother died in an institution, I was frightened.
Well, you're not now, are you?
No, because I know it's very unlikely I would inherit the problem. When one parent is schizophrenic, the odds that a child will also develop mental problems are 90 to 95% against.
Well, that's what Dr. Lennox told me. They seem like very good odds to me.
I wouldn't lie to you, Nicole. You have nothing to worry about.
Who am I to argue with a doctor?
Ryan.
Dad. It was so quiet down here. I thought everyone had gone to bed.
Why the suitcase?
Well, that's usually what one takes along on a trip.
You leaving?
Dad, ever since we finished Mansion of the Damned, I've been kind of restless. Oh, hell, there isn't any reason for me to hang around Monticello.
I see. So, where are you going?
I plan on catching the late flight to Los Angeles.
I thought we were all going out there next week. I thought we'd probably all go together.
Well, yeah, I talked to a friend of mine who lives in West L.A. He's going to be away for a couple weeks on business, and he needs a house sitter to keep an eye on the place. I thought it'd be a good idea to head out there now.
Sure. Get rid of your Midwest pallor. Start working on the tan.
Yeah. And by the time you get out there, I'll be raring to go on post-production on the film. Dad, please, I just need some time by myself.
Brian, sit down. I've got something to tell you.
Look, I really do have to get to the airport, Dad.
It's important.
All right. What's the matter?
Brian, I've got something to tell you. It may make you reconsider leaving.
I've just about made up my mind about that, Dad.
Trust me, things change. In fact, what I have to tell you, Brian, may change your whole life.